G'day, I'm Aaron from Collins Gregory Real Estate. We wanted to provide our owners with a further update on some of the changes to our tenancy laws for rental properties here in Queensland. Today I wanted to revisit some of the changes that we've discussed in our earlier owner updates, while also taking a look at some further changes that will come into effect in May 2025. One of the important changes that took effect last year were changes to how break leases are to be handled. Break lease costs are now referred to as reletting costs and are now worked through by using a calculation. This calculation is based upon how much time of the fixed tenancy agreement has expired or the amount of rent payable for the vacancy window, whichever is the lesser amount. It is important to note that no additional costs can be charged to a tenancy. In the past, costs such as advertising or break lease fees could be charged to a tenancy as compensation. This is no longer the case. Let's take a look at the calculation. To find the reletting costs payable by a tenant, first we calculate the cost based upon how much time of the tenancy agreement has expired. This corresponds to a number of weeks of rent payable. Secondly, we calculate the amount of rent that would have been payable by the tenant from the date of their vacate to the day a new tenancy begins, so the vacancy gap. The reletting costs will be whichever amount is the lesser of the calculations. Let's work through an example. In our example, our tenant has signed a 1-year lease agreement paying $500 per week, covering from the 1st of January through to the 31st of December. The tenant gives notice to vacate on the 14th of May. We begin advertising to secure a new tenant who then moves in 9 days after, on the 23rd of May. Based upon the calculation, the tenant has lived in the property for 36% of the fixed term lease period before they vacated. This would then provide a reletting cost of 3 weeks' rent. With a weekly rent of $500, this would equal $1,500. We then calculate the amount of rent payable for the vacancy time between the two tenancies. In our example, this would be a period of 9 days. With a weekly rent of $500, this will equate to a reletting cost of $642.85. As the tenant is required to pay the lesser amount of the calculation, in our example, the relet costs would be $642.85. As you will no doubt appreciate, the changes to break lease and reletting costs will impact all owners and landlords at some point in the future. As always, we'll work on each situation and the various factors to maintain compliance with the law. In some instances, a deeper discussion at the time of the activity will be important. As previously communicated with our owners, there have been some changes to how we are now required to invoice tenants for their water usage. We now have a strict window of 30 days from the date of the water bill being received by the property owner to charge the tenant. If the invoice is not issued to the tenant within this required time frame, the tenant is not required to pay for the water consumption charges. There are some further legislative changes that take effect in May 2025. A new prescribed form of tenancy application will soon be released, with property managers being limited in what information we can request from prospective tenants. This does have the potential for application processing to be slowed down, but it is still very early days. There are changes to be made with some entry notice provisions moving from 24 hours to 48 hours, and further limits being applied for when a property is vacating or ending a lease. A new process for the attachment of fixtures or structural changes in properties. This will be formalised with new timeframes, similar to how pet application approvals are now handled. As with all of these reforms, Anita and I will keep you informed as further information becomes available. We've seen many new changes flow through the industry in recent years, and although these reforms do add some additional complexity to the management of an investment property, the changes are manageable with good communication and good process. So, if you have any questions about how these changes may impact you and your investment property, please feel free to get in touch. We're here to help. And thanks for watching.